Hello, guys, and welcome back to Tactical Fishing. Your boy, the Nature Boy here. Thank you for joining me today on this great episode. And we're just talking about some basic stuff, one-on-one things for new beginners, and also if you're advanced, you can tweak your game a little bit. Baby, I say this is the year of the Giants. This is a 3-pounder, easy spot on the Colorado blade. Look at that. But last time we talked about Texas rig. Very simple lure. I usually use my weighted Texas rig, and we talked about, of course, I love throwing Dugan baits, so that's the Dugan bait. I like to use mine Texas rig style open eye hook weighted, and so great way to hook up with some great bait fish. We have a great episode to cover today, but first we're going to talk about, of course, Mystery Tackle Box. Mystery Tackle Box. MysteryTackleBox.com, sponsored by Carl's Bait and Tackle. It's a great way to get some great lures for a very low price. If you go in the store, you're going to spend probably like 60, 70 bucks on the baits in here. They have different ways of getting different boxes. They have a regular box, a pro box, and they have different boxes for your different level of bass fishing. And they also have a promo code that you can put in. They might have something, a discount, usually do. But if they don't, you can put my promo code in and get your first box of $10 off. Have a lot of other great stuff. So check out Mystery Tackle Box, MysteryTackleBox.com, and get it popping. So, I'm going to cover something very important in bass fishing. I'm going to talk about the rod. Last time I talked about, buying good line, and I talked about the rod, how it's your antenna. That is true. The rod is your antenna, man. It helps you picture and visualize what's going on at the bottom, whether it be rocks or branches or weeds, or leaves. And you can find it all out by using the Texas rig, man. Feel your way at the bottom, and you can determine, with trial and error and lots of practice and lots of work, you can find out whether that your Texas rig is just snagged, or a fish has it, or a fish kind of got it or playing around with it. Like I said, it comes by trial and error and practice. And so this is a medium heavy rod. I think I have a 12-pound test line. I have good line on here, and it's a great rod that I like. And also going to talk about the drag. And drag is very important when you're bass fishing. Let me see if I can pull this off again, because I tied it on. I'm going to talk about the drag. Drag is very important when you're hooked on to a 12-pounder, 10-pounder, 8, 7-pounder, and also spotted bass fight really hard. And so this is your key right here to turn it. But I got mine locked already, and that's about how I want it. That's a good way I want it, and you can see where I have it if you can turn yours that way, or rewind the video and kind of measure out. So this open cast rod, I like the open cast, very simple to use, and also it has a lock mechanism. So if it usually moves around this way freely, but if you lock it in place, it stays. And so learning how to use the drag is very important with catching those big fish. And so last time we covered what I call ground and pound. I usually throw this when everything else fails. You see a lot of bass fishermen do it. They throw like a drop shot or shaky head or something like that. But, Texas rig works fine. When you're throwing, if you're an advanced fisherman, or even a beginner, you might throw like a lipless crankbait or something like that. When you're throwing something like that, if you miss the fish, it doesn't get hooked, because most fish won't come back if they get hooked. Um, but if you don't hook it and you just miss it, you can clean up with a ground and pound. I call it a cleanup bait. I like using cleanup baits. You know, they've done very, very well for me. I've caught a lot of big fish. Matter of fact, one of my biggest record fish that I've ever caught was like a 7 pound LB bass, largemouth bass, and I was using a Texas rig style. I think it was weighted, and I threw a black trick worm out, and it picked it up. And so it's a great way to clean up. And how I like to use my different lures and stuff. If I have 3 rods, if I go out 3 rods, I'll throw something I'm very familiar with. And if it's a new place, I throw like a lipless crankbait or a Colorado blade or something I really like throwing. And so, if that doesn't work, I'll slide down to the next thing. If none of them work, which, it's so random, I don't like it, but I'll whip out the Texas rig style trick worm, and I'll clean up and I'll catch some fish that I missed. And so it's a great, like I said, Texas rig style worm is a great way to clean up and get those fish that you missed. And also, we're going to talk about another ground and pound is the grubs, and it's used the same way. A different action, but you hook it up the same way. Um, most grub baits you can't hook it up in a Texas rig style. Most of them they changed it a lot to where you can hook them up in a style that you want. This is a trench hog. Of course, knowing me, I love using Googan bait trench hogs, and this is a Googan bait Pure Passion trench hog. You can get these bad boys Bass Pro Shop, Big Sporting Goods, and they're good ground and pound baits. I like to use and have a certain technique, and I'll save that for the springtime when these bass are really moving. But you have your setup here, and like I said, the realism behind the movement is very, very important. Usually I move mines, with I'll kind of jerk it around a little bit, kind of get the fish's attention, but I'll give it like 3 pops and I'll rest it, 2 pops, rest it, 3, and I'll keep that same pace. Like I'll go 1, 2, 3, let it sit, 1, 2, let it sit. And that's all based upon the water, your skips and movement. And that comes from, like, if you throw real short and you can pop it how you want it, and you basically kind of learn how the water is going. If it's very still water, usually you can do whatever you want, or if it's, like I said, if it's heavy water, you can do whatever you want. But if the water's, very light, like I said, it all depends on the water and how you move it. And like I said, like I share with people, all fish have a code. They have a code in their mind of how they want to fish, to move, how they want a swim bait to move. And when you hit that right code, those fish are hit. And sometimes all the fish have that same code, and they attack in certain movements. And so the next lure we're going to talk about is the lipless crankbait. Check that out. That is a small lipless crankbait. And I picked it for a reason, a very good reason, because of the size. And also, when it comes to lipless crankbaits and jerk baits and square bills, it based upon the color, the texture. How do the bait fish look? This is like a brim color. This can be a bait fish. What we call in bad fishing world, match the hatch. So you want to match how those fish look. And that's carved out like a little small fish. And so when I use lipless crankbaits, if I'm at a new place, I'll throw it out and just reel it in to cover a lot of ground as I'm fishing. And I go back and do cleanup with the Texas rig or something like that if I'm at a new place. But how I fish a Texas rig, if I'm just trying to fill out the fish, I'm just throwing it out and I'm reeling it in. And I'll probably go probably about that much, and I'll speed up. All depends, especially during the summertime. Coming around spring, you want to speed up a little bit, but during the winter time, slow time, you're going to go a little slow. But how I use it, like I said, I throw it out and reel it in. Sometimes I throw it out and I'll reel it and just give it like a quick 3 jerks, and I'll reel it quick 2 jerks, and I'll do it that way. Um, it all depends on what the fish like or what they hit. So it comes with trial and error and just kind of getting familiar with the area and learning what the fish want. But these baits were really used to resemble a dime bait fish. So the old school way, you throw it out, you let it sink all the way to the bottom, and you kind of pop it up and let it sink back down. You'll pop it 1, 2, 3, 1 or 1, 2. It all depends upon, like I said, the water. How much you can move that lure, whether the water's heavy or light. And I found out for me, the way I use it, I throw it out and just reel it in and give it some pops, and that's always worked for me. Throwing a lipless crankbait, but like I said, lipless crankbait is great for covering a lot of ground. I use smaller because I feel like the fish want that more. But if you're fishing like a pond or a small place, this is great. But if you're doing open water, you can go big. But like I said, it's all about matching the hatch, what those fish look like and what they want. And so we covered a lot today. Thank you guys for joining me again today. And don't forget, when you hit and miss, always clean up with a Texas rig. And also you can throw your grubs, And that is it for today. Thank you guys for joining me for another episode of Fisherman Huddle. And remember to keep it popping.